Tonight, an important update to a WFF-48 investigation into a former Boy Scout volunteer accused of running an international child porn ring out of Huntsville. James McCullers was indicted last year, and his trial is scheduled now for May 19th.
Since we broke the story back in December, concerned parents and local scouts have contacted us saying they would have never known about McCullers' arrest if it had not been for our reports.
WFF-48's Margot Gray wanted to know what the notification policies are for the Boy Scouts of America when it comes to sex offense.
Mark, I found out a lot, but not what I expected. As you said, we heard from several parents who say the Boy Scouts of America never notified them about McCullers' charges. Naturally, I wanted to know why these parents are being kept in the dark, so I spent months examining the organization's policies and past practices when it comes to a situation like this. And what I found out won't have many scouting parents sleeping any easier tonight.
It's the United States versus James McCullers. The charges: engaging in a child exploitation enterprise and conspiring to distribute and receive child pornography in Alabama, Indiana, and as far as Lebanon. Court documents claim McCullers created online chat rooms where he and 10 other men would discuss their sexual interest in young boys, and they could view and trade large amounts of child porn. And to join, one would have to submit pictures first to ensure they weren't law enforcement. Investigators say this went on from 2000 and continued until April of 2012. The criminal complaint states McCullers went by the alias DJ online. But off the web, he was a Boy Scout volunteer who worked at the Huntsville Scout Shop. And before getting laid off in 2009, McCullers worked as the Director of Computer and Network Services at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. The criminal complaint goes on to say McCullers told other members of this online child porn ring that he camped with boys and molested them. He also shared pictures and videos of himself. Scary stuff for any parent to hear. So what does the Boy Scouts of America have to say about the allegations and their policies when it comes to notifying parents about a volunteer accused of such crimes? Not nearly as much as I and parents expected. So day after day, I tried, and tried again. Finally, hopping in the car and heading to BSA regional headquarters for answers.
A Scout executive refused to do an on-camera interview and would not address abuse allegations. Instead, he sent me Boy Scout policies on youth protection through text messages and pointed me directly to their website, all the while refusing to answer specific questions on parental notification in the McCullers case.
Though after my visit to Boy Scout Regional Headquarters, I did get more information by email from Scout Executive J.T. Dabbs. We have received no indication that the Scouts who came into contact with this individual were treated inappropriately in any way, and no youth or parents have come forward with any allegations. Upon learning of these allegations, we immediately revoked this individual's membership in 2012, and he has been permanently banned from the scouting program. I was told McCullers' primary responsibilities were administrative, and his day-to-day focus was not on leading scouts. So I brought these photos to Dabbs' attention. Pictures McCullers posted on his public Facebook page. Pictures from the 2010 Boy Scout Jamboree, where he's seen working inside the trading post and around scouts who were trading badges. Dabbs responded saying, in regards to the Jamboree, he was not one of our Jamboree leaders who traveled and worked with our youth. He served on the program's staff, which was administered by the national office, so I cannot verify who he may or may not have come in contact with. Since it was administered by the national office, you might think like I did, that someone there would have some answers. Think again. No one at the national office could or would verify that either. Their only response was in writing, saying, our policies require that adults, whether employees or volunteers lending a hand at a jamboree, use 2 deep leadership. This policy requires that 2 registered adult leaders be present at all scouting activities, and that no one-on-one contact is permitted outside of view of other adults and youth. Boy Scout officials stress youth protection is of paramount importance, and policies like 2 deep leadership and criminal background checks are just 2 ways they ensure safety. On top of that, officials verify an applicant is not listed in the ineligible volunteer files. The file lists those who have worked with scouts before with less than admirable results. These are people who have been accused of child abuse or convicted abusers who've been blacklisted from ever volunteering again. McCullers has been added to the file since his arrest, but we asked for an updated copy of who else made the list, and we were refused. And we are not the first to be turned down. Up until 2010, the very existence of these files was a well-kept secret. Against Scout wishes, 14,000 pages of the organization's confidential files, also known as the perversion files, were made public. The fight to have them released took Oregon attorney Gillian Dumas to that state's Supreme Court in a case where a 13-year-old boy was sexually abused by his scoutmaster. Based on facts of the case, the court only released files from 1965 to 1985. But we have learned the Boy Scouts' quote-unquote perversion files date back to at least 1920. In those files, Dumas says you'll find where some alleged abusers were allowed to resign quietly, while others were merely put on membership probation, only to end up violating children again. From Oregon, Dumas told me the release of those files is the biggest breakthrough in child safety in the last few decades.
Those files constitute the largest single body of knowledge of how pedophiles operate, how they're drawn to where the children are, how they groom the children, how they pick their children to be their victims. And that was an enormous, untapped resource because the Boy Scouts had never made those files public.
But she says secrets are still being kept.
The Boy Scouts do not tell sponsoring organizations about the file system. The Boy Scouts don't tell troops about the file system. They don't tell families in the troops, and they don't tell Boy Scouts that these files exist.
She says the system is still flawed because it takes a paid employee at the state or national level to report it. She admits the organization has made efforts to better mandate child safety training, but more has to be done. Child abuse safety is just the tip of the iceberg at the 30th Annual Symposium on Child Abuse at the VBC, where more than 1,000 child protection professionals and advocates addressed abuse prevention.
We also have a children's program that really revolves around giving children a voice.
Sex abuse expert Angela Williams is the founder of Voice Today, a nonprofit dedicated to breaking the cycle of child abuse. And sadly, her expertise comes from experience.
I lost my entire childhood. My sexual abuse started at age 3, and I was sexually abused until age 17, and that ended in a suicide attempt.
And just like her situation, most offenders know their victims.
93% of the time, the child knows, loves, and trusts the perpetrator.
Now she spreads the word about prevention, especially in an organization like the Boy Scouts.
It has to be more important, the safety of a child, than the reputation of an organization.
Again, James McCullers is set to go to trial in Indiana May 19th. We tried to speak with McCullers, but we were only able to speak with his attorney, Kenneth Riggins. Riggins says his client is shocked by the accusations and looks forward to trial to clear his name. Of course, we'll stay on top of this story as it develops. If you would like to scour those perversion files yourself, we've posted a link to view them all on our website. Reporting, Margot Gray, WAFF 48 News.